Good evening and welcome to our February 22nd Transportation and Parking Commission meeting. We have a roll call, roll call, please.
Commissioner Kirkjian?
Here.
Commissioner Yakubian? Commissioner Sahakian? Commissioner Bartrusel?
Here.
Chairperson Gonzalez?
Here. Mr. Coe, will you start us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you, and again, welcome to our meeting this evening. We're going to move to agenda item number 3. We have the minutes for our August 24th, 2015 regular meeting. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, I would welcome a motion for approval, please.
I'll move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, the motion carries. And also, please, our December 14th special meeting. Are there any corrections or additions? I would entertain a motion for approval, please.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any objections? Okay, the motion carries. The information I have for items requesting to speak would be under the action item number 5. Is that correct, Anush, the ones you gave me?
Yes, that is correct.
These are all relative to the action item under the speed bumps on Ivy between San Fernando Road and Pacific Avenue. So looks like we can go directly to that unless there are any oral communications that you received any cards on other than agenda item number 5. Okay, hearing none, so we'll close that portion and we'll go to 5A.
At item 5A is a report regarding installation of speed humps on Ivy Street between San Fernando Road and Pacific Avenue. At 5A1 is a motion approving installation of 5 speed humps on Ivy Street between San Fernando Road and Pacific Avenue.
So Rubek, you want to start, please? Please.
Thank you, Chair Gonzalez, members of the Commission. Essentially, we received a request from a resident on Ivy Street to install speed humps on the 500, 600, and 700 block of Ivy Street between San Fernando Road and Pacific Avenue. Consequently, staff conducted an engineering study that showed all the traffic calming measures and criteria are met within those 3 blocks of Ivy Street. And hence it makes it eligible for speed humps. We also received a petition signed by 85% of the residents in favor of the speed humps. These will include 5 speed humps within those 3 blocks at a cost of $17,500 that will have one of our private contractors install them. Based on that, we recommend approval of the attached motion. And if you have any questions, both Mr. Coe, our principal traffic engineer, and I would be happy to answer.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments for Mr. Coe or for Rubik? So it seems then, and I misspoke, they're speed humps, not speed bumps. I apologize. So we have a number of requests to speak on this topic. So I will start with, unless there are any other comments from us at this point.
Do you happen to have the drawing exactly where they're going, or is that when he's going to show us in his presentation?
Yeah, we do have, let me go to, this is actually a drawing showing the stretch of Ivy Street between Pacific and San Fernando Road. It's a pretty long stretch, actually. It's 2,100 feet long without any side street or any interruption in between. And so staff is proposing proposing exactly 5 speed humps to be installed. And they are pretty much about 300 feet apart, with the exception of the western side of that stretch, because there's some light industrial development along San Fernando Road, or close to San Fernando Road, and we try to stay out of that area with speed humps because of truck delivery activities, that type of stuff. But other than that, it's pretty much evenly spaced, about 300 feet apart. And we specifically actually get the signatures from the residents who live next to the speed humps, get their approval on the petition.
Okay.
Any other staff information to give before we ask those to speak who have requested to speak?
Let me ask, why 5 speed humps, not 4 or 3 or 6, for example?
Usually, based on our experience, the speed hump, the separation, the distance between speed humps is about 250 to 350 feet. In this case, anything that is longer, you will start having a vehicle picking up speeds in between. So that's the reason why we're trying to keep a uniform speed along that stretch of Ivy Street. And that's also in our guideline, in our design guideline as well. It's 250 to 300 feet or so.
Thank you.
Sure.
And what do you do at driveways, or do you?
We try to avoid driveways, the installation between driveways, actually. We have our staff, Mr. Brendan Wong, has already identified the location where the speed humps is going to be away from driveways.
And are these humps, do they have any opening within the hump, or is it totally across the street?
Totally across the street, but they stop at the gutter line, the edge of the gutter, so
Drainage.
that doesn't affect drainage. Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay. Hearing no other questions from the commissioners, and there are...
One more question.
Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. What are...
Is it going to not detract, so make parking more difficult when the people are parking? Are they going to go, especially when they're backing into space to park cars? Is this going to be from, let's say, red to red or something like that, or how is that outlined? Is that is it predetermined?
We have not experienced that problem. The highest point of this hump is about 3.5 inches above the pavement.
Okay.
So we have never experienced that type of problem in the past.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no objections from the commissioners or staff, we're going to ask those to please come to the microphone who have requested to speak. The first one is Jane Patel. Please. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Council, for your time and consideration in this matter regarding the installation of speed humps on our street, our stretch, our very long block of Ivy Street. My name is Jane Patel, and I have been a resident of Ivy Street for 5 years. I am the one who initially made the request for speed humps on our street, or at least to find out what the process would be to have those installed. When we passed the speed test last year around this time, I received the petition, and myself and another resident, Edgar, who will be coming up to speak in a little bit as well, we both found overall resounding support from the street, from all the occupancies, for support of the installation of speed humps. I'd like to take this time to talk a little bit about our street and the particular aspects of it as to why it's a magnet for speeders. As was described, we're almost a half a mile long, with parking on one side of the street. I would venture to say we may be the only street in Glendale that is at almost a half a mile long with parking on only one side. And what that means is folks can come down our street and drive as fast as they want over a half a mile stretch without having to slow down for oncoming traffic. So there is nothing in our street, no stop sign, no turn in the road, nothing that keeps someone from building up speeds. And certainly I don't have a radar gun in my back pocket, but I would say 40 easy 50, 60, sometimes so fast it sounds like a speedway. Our street empties out into two major throughways, Pacific Avenue and San Fernando Road, both of which are 4 lanes of traffic. And then finally, we are 1 block, I think it's south of Broadway, which, as of course we all know, is a major throughway as well. So there are lights at the corner of Pacific Avenue and Ivy Street, as well as San Fernando and Ivy Street. And impatient drivers who don't want to wait for that light can just, as soon as they see the light, just, take a left turn, take a right turn right onto our street and bypass the light so that they can drive a half a mile to get to the next block. Other factors to know about our particular area of Glendale, we are 1 block away from the Glendale Galleria, and we are 3 blocks from the Americana, as well as downtown Glendale. We're also a half a mile from the Colorado Freeway extension. So basically, folks who don't want to be on Colorado, who are, aficionados about how to zigzag through residential streets, it makes a lot more sense to drive down 3 more blocks to our street, where they don't have to wait for the light that breaks up Colorado and moves most of the traffic onto the freeway. So if they're trying to get down to San Fernando, for example, it's a lot more convenient to drive down our street. The third item is that, and this is new information for me, Geico's my car insurance company, and according to them, we are the most expensive spot in Glendale, in all of Glendale, to get car insurance because of the number of accidents that happen in our very area, as well as the number of traffic violations, which includes speeding. So a little information about our residents. We have deaf, blind, elderly residents on our street. We also have many families with young children, all of whom would greatly benefit from having speed humps installed on our street. Every day there are children on bikes. There are parents and grandparents pushing strollers. There are parents with toddlers, walking with their push toys. And we have many residents who have to park quite a distance from their home to where they live because of the fact that we have quite a few apartment buildings on our street. I don't know how it breaks down, but I think it's almost half apartment versus, I'm sorry. Can I have another moment or two, if that's all right?
A brief moment, yes.
Okay, all right. So at any rate, people have to walk quite a distance to get to their car just because parking is difficult on our street. Just to clear up just a few more moments, I just want to say I'm in full support of 5 speed humps on our street. I want to make sure that everyone in our street feels safe, and keeping those 5 speed humps will keep the traffic at a consistent level and also deter them. It won't be nearly as convenient to drive down our street versus waiting at the light. So if we only have 3 speed humps, well, you can go over the first one, speed, get to the next one, and it would be faster still to drive down our street than to wait at the lights. So I just want to push the 5 speed humps. I think that's a very great suggestion. The last thing I just want to say is that they have begun construction at the corner of Broadway and Pacific. The former Office Depot that used to be there, they've raised it. And from my understanding, they are building 174 condos there with a strip of businesses on the first floor. So what that means is that very block, one block north of us at Broadway and Pacific, they are going to have a lot more increased traffic there. And that will just drive more folks to drive down our street all the more unless we get those speed humps installed. So thank you so much, council members, for hearing my concerns, and I really do hope you'll find in favor of the installation of speed bumps on our street. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Patel. The next speaker is Colin Hoffmeister, please.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for having this hearing tonight, and I will keep this brief. I've been a resident on Ivy Street for approximately 4 years, and in that time, I have personally picked up 2 cats that have been killed. Assume it was due to cars going very quickly. 1 raccoon and a possum. I've lived in all different parts of the country, in cities and urban areas, and I've never seen that many killed animals on one street. I came home one time from work, and I'll, with your permission, if I could pass these photos around, a minivan was speeding so fast down the street that it lost control, hit a curb. The curb exploded like a hand grenade. You can see concrete everywhere, flipped 3 times and took a tree out. Luckily, the driver survived and nobody was on the sidewalk and was killed. So with your permission, I'd just like you to see that. I don't know what the speed was of that vehicle. I imagine the police department may have that somewhere. As you know, there's families. There's a animal protection service down the street. They have volunteers walking the dogs and all the time, which is a great service for our community, and it puts them in danger if we have cars that are literally flipping onto the sidewalk. So in closing, I would just like to say I support the 5-speed humps, and I trust the engineering capabilities that the distance is the proper distance to do this in order to have a calming effect on traffic. And I think that's it.
Very good.
Thank you very much for your time, and thank you, Jane, for putting this together and for all concerned citizens here.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffmeister. Mr. Edgar Yarigarian, please.
Good evening. My name is Edgar Yarigarian. I've lived on Ivy Street since 1989, 1 block up, actually. I was telling some of our neighbors today that I grew up playing soccer on the street. We would put nets on either end, and about once every 45 minutes, one of us would yell, "Car." We'd move it, and Glendale has changed. There's a lot more people. There's going to be a lot more traffic, and we understand that. We're not asking to block off the street on either end. Jane brought up the point of the development where the former Home Depot used to be, and the Americana and the Glendale Galleria. We understand that Glendale is growing. Traffic is going to increase on our street. But that doesn't take away from the fact that it is a long stretch of uninterrupted driving. And even being a resident there, I'm guilty of speeding myself, because you pull onto the street and there's nothing in front of you. It's open. You feel like, yes, the speed limit says 25 miles per hour. You find yourself hitting 30 to 35 just because there's nothing to interrupt you. And Luke is one of the babies on our block, and the last thing I want is for one of our neighbors or their children to get struck by a vehicle. God forbid it be me, because there's nothing to interrupt your driving ability there. Again, I support the 5 humps because the experts say that's what's supposed to be there. They've done the research. They know what the distances are supposed to be. There's another issue here. This as a deterrent for semi-trucks. For some reason, they find that Ivy Street is an appropriate street to drive down instead of Broadway, which is the main street they should be on. The only reason for that is because there's parking on one side without anything interrupting. And the last thing you want to hear at 4 a.m. is a big semi-truck with its trailer rattling down your block. And yes, I think we might hear that the first month or so, but once one semi-driver gets on this street one time, they won't get back on it again. So also, there is an issue right here with the traffic lights on the corner of Broadway and Brazil. San Fernando and Brazil, you guys, I'm sure, are aware of that issue. It's being taken care of apparently in the upcoming year. But that also adds to what Jane was talking about. People see that light and they make a right-hand turn into Ivy Street. So we've had to deal with that for a while. That's it. I mean, there's full support behind this. There's a lot of children. There's a new generation growing up on Ivy. I hope that they can feel free to play in their front front yard at least if they can't play in the street like I did. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jamie Davis, please. Hi.
I'll be quick because everyone's covered this pretty thoroughly. I've lived on the street for 2 years. I have an 8-year-old. I'm a school teacher in Glendale, and I'm in agreement of all the issues. But one thing I personally experience, because I live on the side of the street where there's parking, is literally every morning when I back out, I have to hold my breath. I can't see, so you can't see that well backing out, so you just I have to hope that no one's driving that fast down the street at that moment. If I could, I wish I could clearly communicate how fast people drive, especially on the weekends. It is unbelievable. My living room faces the street. I mean, we're talking 55 and upwards. It's alarming. I cannot have my son out front. And I just hope that you'll agree to this. And we're really hoping for the 5 humps. And yeah, I just want to be here for my support. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for being a school teacher. Eric Oakland, please.
My name is Eric Oakland. I have lived on Ivy Street for 7 years. And again, I'm not going to take a lot of time because you guys have heard all of our really good arguments for why we feel we need these 5 speed humps. I do walk my dog every single day, at least twice a day, or at least once a day, if not twice a day, the whole block. So I know you're probably thinking we're exaggerating at about 50 miles an hour. It is no joke. I can't tell you how many times my dog's almost been hit. I've seen kids on the street almost get hit because people are just driving so fast because they can, because we're a really, really good shortcut. And we would like to not be that shortcut if we get these 5 speed humps installed. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison Hodgson Laramend, please.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, I've lived on Ivy for 5 years with my husband. My husband grew up in the house that we live in, and he, it was nothing like the way it is right now. Literally, when people go by, my whole house just sucks in, and then, because they're going so fast. I've also had an experience with my dog, and he got hit by a car, and it was on a rainy day. Our gate was kind of ajar, and he got out for some reason. And it was a hit and run, and so I had to take him to the emergency that night. But thank God he's tough. Anyway, and I also want to just say that thank you for having this today. My heart is so happy. I can't believe this is happening. I'm just really excited. If you guys would do the 5 humps, it would just really make us really happy, and it just make me feel safe if I decide to have kids, and just would make me feel so much more safer in the neighborhood.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen Esimov.
Hello there. My name's Steve Asimo. I've lived on Ivy Street for 30 years. And within the last 5 years, I've noticed a big increase in people driving recklessly. Ivy is kind of a peculiar street, the stretch we live on. As Jane previously alluded to, it's quite a long stretch of open road, and there's only parking on one side. So you can really, go very fast, or you can see what's going ahead of you, and there's nothing to stop you if you want to speed. Every day during rush hour, there's a number of speeders that scare me. They're going, maybe 40, 50 miles an hour, and way too fast for safety. And as one lady noticed, if you're trying to back out of your driveway, you just have to pray that nobody's speeding down the street because you can't see very well. I had a cat that was killed at night from somebody probably going too fast. Late at night, you have people that drive really, really fast. We're talking like 60, 70 miles an hour. You don't hardly even see the car. You just see a blur going by. And, people are just using this as their own private racetrack. And the speed should be 25 miles an hour. And the speed bumps are a really great idea. It would stop the speeding. And, I think it would help the quality of life. I take a lot of walks along the sidewalk, and I don't feel really great about people speeding along the street. I worry about somebody losing control and killing me. And I'd be much more comfortable with people going at 25 miles an hour. So thank you so much for the speed bump proposal. I hope it goes through. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Acevedo. This looks like the last speaker that we have request to speak. Ephraim Patel.
Hi, good evening. I'm Ephraim Patel, and I've been a resident on Ivy Street for 5 years. My wife is Jane. She's the one who spearheaded this proposal, and we have a 2-year-old boy who you've probably been hearing throughout this meeting. He's very impatient, but he loves to be outside, and he loves to be outside on our street. Every day he wants to go up and down our street. And one of the reasons I love Ivy Street so much is because it is the kind of residential street where you see kids on bikes and strollers and kids walking home from school, and with the Humane Society, you've got volunteers walking dogs all the time. It's very, on one moment, it feels very idyllic and residential, and then the next moment, that illusion is shattered because someone goes by really fast. And I've actually found myself shouting at cars as they go by to try to get them to slow down. I mean, that's how ridiculous the speeds are. So you've heard all of the facts as to the particularities of why this is, and I just want to point out that this photo of Ivy Street is the one unique spot where there's a few car lengths of parking on both sides of the street. It's at the end that connects to Pacific. There's an apartment building there. It's a little bit wider, and that allows for parking on both sides. But if you can see just beyond that, it is clear, open road. And as Edgar pointed out, it is, I find myself wanting to speed on the street. I have to check myself all the time because it's so unusual to be on a stretch like this with no one in front of you. And so I really have to be careful about my speeds. So the folks who are using this as a shortcut really, I don't know how else to manage the speeds. So I thank you, and I hope you really do consider giving us the 5 speed humps.
Very good.
Thank
you, Mr. Patel. So this is listed as an action item. Any further discussion by commissioners or staff or questions? Yes, Alan.
Mr. Koch, can you tell us, I know that there are different variations of speed humps, and maybe the city now has a uniform way of doing it, but I know that there are some speed humps that you can more or less get by speeding through them, and there are some harder ones, like the ones on Mountain Street, for example, that are a little harsher. Which style are we adopting, and at which speed do you recommend that people go over these speed humps?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Bartolov, actually, currently the city only have one design standard. It's a 12-foot wide speed humps. As you cross the speed hump, the dimension is 12 feet, and it's spread across the entire length of the roadway and stop at the gutter line. Basically, it's a curved design, and it's designed for a design speed of 25 miles per hour, basically the speed limit of it. If you go faster than that is you can start having that lifting motion there, and that's what discourages speeders from driving too fast.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Almost each speaker was suggesting speeds of 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. What was the average speed when you did a survey?
Actually, let me show you the statistic we have. If you look at the table here, we show an 85th percentile speed of 36 miles per hour. What it means is 85% of the drivers drive at or below that speed. So you have the 15% that is going really fast, but the majority of people are driving 36. It is faster than normal for residential street with 25 miles per hour. Usually your 85 will be about 30, 32 or so, but in this case actually is faster than normal. I wouldn't say everybody is driving 50, 60, but you do have that 15% that would be faster. But 85% of the people driving at or below 36 miles per hour.
Yeah, given the inquiry, the comments made, are there, it may have been in the report and I might have missed it, are there any record of citations of being given by the police department on that street particularly? Because it sounds like it's a serious condition for a while, and it looks like there are steps being taken to mitigate it, but I'm just curious if, since it's known as a speed street, do police officers are aware of that? Do we know?
Yeah, actually, the staff doesn't have that information. Maybe Lieutenant Bracken will shed some light on this issue.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, sir, but I'm just curious as to a street like that has had the kinds of comments from the residents, if there's any way that those are monitored in any special way.
Mr. Chairperson, no, I do not have that data with me.
Okay.
We focus on a lot of different streets within the city. We are aware of the speedings, particularly down in the south portion of the city. Mm-hmm. But for particular sites related to incidents on that street, no.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question about this stat. The 85th percentile stat is interesting. I feel like 36 is even high, especially on a street where the posted speed limit's 25, and the objective of this is to maintain that speed limit. Do we know which percentile is going 26 and over, as opposed to knowing that 85% is going 36 or under?
No, we don't have that information right now. We can provide that information when we go through that data, because we did collect speed survey information at this stretch of the roadway. Yes, we have that information, but we'll provide that later if you want to. Yes.
And there was a comment made that this is the only humps that we have. When did we put that into effect? Because there have been, I think, over time, discussion of different types of humps or bumps.
Right. Actually, the city, for public roadway, the city used to put in lumps and humps. Lumps are the humps with grooves in them, right, so designed specifically for fire trucks to go through them. Mm-hmm. In the past, we have some problem with vehicles trying to go through the same area and end up basically traveling right in the middle of the roadway. So we actually basically do not do speed lumps anymore. So right now, the only device we install are speed humps.
The ones on Mountain, as you go towards Kenneth Village, are those lumps then?
Those, I believe those could be lumps, yes. Those were done a long time ago, yes.
So the slope of that lump, is that the same as, aside from not having the opening, is that the same as a hump?
That is correct, yes.
I drove the street yesterday 3 times. I went back and forth. There was only one car, and as everyone said, was wide open. And north side of the street where they're parking, there was not a single parking space. It was full. One of the problems I think the street has is parking. Why parking is only on one side of the street, not on both sides of the street? What was the background? Can you give me an idea about what was the background that you guys went that direction?
Actually, we did some research on this subject. We also asked the fire department, because it's in the vicinity of Fire Station 21. The fire department right now is not in support of having parking on both sides. We do have requests from residents to allow parking on both sides. And if you look at some of the streets to the south of Ivy Street, they do have parking on both sides. But that would have other type of problem, because curb to curb width is only 30 feet, and driveways are very narrow. So if we allow parking on both sides, there are other issues to deal with, because some might have trouble backing out of the driveway, some might have trouble actually seeing oncoming traffic. So that's another different type of issue to deal with.
Because now I'm thinking, as everybody was talking, I came down Jackson from Mountain all the way down to get here. It's a very similar scenario where there are cars on both sides of the streets, and and this may be a multi-unit area. It's more congested than Jackson was, or Jackson is, but you can have red curbs and traffic on both sides, which automatically will reduce speed. Now it's wide open, half a mile.
Yes, actually, Jackson is a little bit wider. I believe Jackson is about 36 feet curb to curb. In this case, Ivy is only 30 feet curb to curb. Is narrower than Jackson.
Can you put parking on some certain pockets just to slow down people, perhaps, and we can give them more parking? Because, as Jane suggested, if this new construction and goes on where Office Depot used to be, we're probably going to have overflow of parking into those other streets, neighboring streets. These folks might have parking problem in the future, in the very near future.
Right. That would be another request, actually. Again, we will probably most likely go through the same procedure with a petition, and the parking group basically will handle that request. We do need support of at least 75% of the residents on that block to allow parking on both sides.
I think
because there are other issues involved with it too.
Excuse me just a second. Let me just find out. I know that there may be information that you'd like to provide, but I want to confirm that it's okay to receive that after we don't have any other people speaking. I guess, Rubik, I would like to ask you or the attorney, please, it's not technically a public hearing, or is this?
Mr. Chair, it is a public hearing, so once you've received all the comments from the audience who want to speak, you'll need to close the public hearing and you can have the discussion amongst the commissioners.
So contrary to what I said earlier, given the importance of this, maybe it's best that I don't close the public hearing and give someone, maybe two speakers, an opportunity. It sounds like one or two want to speak on what has just been discussed. Okay, please. I know I got it.
Hi, Council. Thank you for hearing me again. My name is Jane Patel. A couple of quick notes about what you guys were talking about as far as parking. It is a problem on our street. It absolutely is. And I would say that we're about half and half, apartment buildings and houses, and most of the houses do have guest houses in the back that they rent out to tenants. So it is a challenge. Parking is definitely a challenge on our street. The difficulty is, as was mentioned, is that the picture that you guys were seeing was a little deceiving because the end of Ivy that hits Pacific is wider. It's considerably wider. And the reason being is when I'm assuming that when they built those last condos, they ripped out the sidewalk. And as you'll see, there's no it's the other end of the street, folks, the other picture.
That's the Pacific one? No.
The Pacific, yeah.
Okay,
there. Okay, so you'll see there's no grass. See, they cut out the grass. And so the street's wider there. And if you, just where that last parked car is, suddenly there's a grass strip between the sidewalk and the street. And that's why the street's narrower. Now, it does make a difference. I don't know enough about the dimensions of vehicles and streets and whatnot, but it is considerably narrower when
I just want to be careful not to put things on the table that are beyond what's on this.
Okay, fine. The other thing I just want to say about that is that the concern that I would have is that even if we don't put in speed humps and we just put parking on both sides, there's still another street 2 blocks over that has speed humps, and they've got parking on both sides.
We're not arguing that at all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
We're just questions. They're just questions being asked because of things that might come before us another time.
Oh.
Right now on the motion on the agenda is the issue.
I'll just one last thing.
No, I think we have it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, I was just going to give you a reason as to why there's parking on one side of the street.
No. I think that's already been answered.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Very good. Thank you.
So I think it's best that we just stick with the agenda item unless there's something very seriously that someone would like to say. I don't think we need to. I think there's been a very good argument made. So I'd like to ask the commissioners if there are any other questions or comments or anything else they would like to hear from staff, or if staff has any question or comment for us.
I think
yes.
Mr. Golanian has some background information for us about parking.
I was going to mention, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, the agenda item before you is strictly regarding the request for speed humps. We can definitely, if it's your desire, the Commission's desire, we can bring you can agendize it. We'll bring a report back regarding parking. but that's not the item in front of you for discussion and making the decision.
No, well, I think that's clear, and I think when the commissioner, we asked the question so that we could have that opportunity. We got some answers, and certainly those who have made their comments this morning know then what a next step might be.
I was there yesterday for at least 15 minutes going back and forth. As I said, there was only one car and not a single parking space on the north side of the street. So can we postpone this to a date certain and perhaps kill two birds with one stone, but address both parking and the hump issue together to these folks?
Chair Gonzalez, Commissioner Kirkjian, if that's the decision of the commission, we can certainly do that.
Any comment, Alex?
I mean, I don't see why I would want the same crowd to come back or express themselves again. It seems pretty clear that they want something done. That might take
just delay
might be a
it.
process that would be months long.
Yes.
But I just wanted to say that I'm all too familiar with the street. One of my good friends from high school lives there, and I'm happy to see his name on the petition. I think this is great. I'm glad you guys are here. This is the mechanisms that we have in the city exactly for this purpose. If residents see that there's a need for something that we may not see or staff may not see, this is exactly what happens. And through this process, we can get things done. Unfortunately, Ivy is not the only street with this problem. It is not a unique problem. There are many streets in Glendale with growth, with increased traffic, with increased congestion, where residents don't feel safe on their own streets, and they don't want even their own kids to play on the streets like we used to when we were young. So there's a mechanism in place, whether it's for speed humps, whether it's for increased parking, whether it's different treatments to slow down traffic on your street. There are ways to do it. So thank you for coming and spending your time, your evening with us, and expressing yourself, and I just want to thank you for being here. And I support that.
I'm sorry. So do I understand, given at least one comment and other comment by other commissioners, that you would like to put a motion on a table? If you look on the page right after the minutes, you will see a draft of a motion. Commissioner, if you'd like to get that on.
I have a question, Mr. Golanian. A gentleman here said that there's semis going at early morning hours, waking them up, knowing the fact that this is a mixed-use street. What I mean by that, part of the street is zoned industrial, which they need truck access. We cannot deny access to them, but can they be put hours? They can be there to travel certain hours of the day and not, let's say, from 6 o'clock in the morning or something like that, not to wake these folks up.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Kirkjian, we do have certain streets in the city that we impose restrictions on weight, but we do require a adoption of an ordinance for that. So again, the agenda item before you is regarding speed humps, but if you like and you get it seconded, we can bring it back at a separate commission meeting and discuss it then.
Okay.
I echo what Alex mentioned and also state that I think it would be in the best interest, depending on how this vote comes out, to keep the momentum going on this item. If residents on the street have other issues that they want to discuss, it certainly is best to bring those along. So I think there is an action item. Is there any commissioner that wants to make a motion on what is recommended here based on the analysis that has been done and the speakers that have been here this evening?
I'll make the motion.
There's a motion to approve the installation of 5 speed humps on Ivy Street between San Fernando Road and Pacific. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion, please? Hearing no discussion, may we have a vote, please?
Commissioner Kirkjian?
Yes.
Commissioner Bartrusov?
Yes.
Chairperson Gonzalez?
Yes. Good. Again, as was stated earlier, thank you for your effort and time and the process. I don't know when this started, Rubik, but it would be interesting. I would be curious when the first person made the request and what month of last year. Any feel for that?
Mr. Cogino?
Actually, I'm looking at the petition. It's actually started back in, some of them are November of 2015, some of them actually June of 2015.
Okay.
So
that's okay. We'll find out. Okay, so we're going to move to our next agenda item, unless the commissioners have any other comments or questions on this.
In case these folks come back with a parking request on the south side of the street, and we already have the humps, it may not be counterproductive to put them if the decision goes differently. If they request it, how soon can it be brought before us?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Kirkjian, whoever makes the petition or the request to staff will have to conduct a parking study very similar to the analysis we did for speed humps. That will take into account all the parking, patterns of parking on the street, the demand for it, pros and cons, the physics of it, the width, so all the disadvantages and advantages will have to be studied. It will take a few months, but I'd submit to you that as much as I'd like to see these speed humps put up tomorrow, there's a process for that also. We have to go and get some prices from our private contractors, get the best qualified, certify the contract. So that's going to take several months too. So like Mr. Coe mentioned, the existence of speed humps should not negatively or otherwise affect the parking study.
Okay, thank you.
So if there are objections, commissioners, we're going to move to agenda item number 5B. Mr. Coe, thank you very much for your report.
Thank you.
Okay, 5B, also noted as an action item, cyclist anti-harassment discussion. Rubik, please. Okay, thank you.
Item 5B is cyclist anti-harassment discussion. At 5B1 is a motion giving direction to staff.
Okay. Mr. Chair, members of the Commission,
thank you.
This is in response to a request by Chair Gonzalez for a discussion at the Commission level regarding a recently adopted ordinance related to anti-harassment of cyclists that was adopted by the City of Los Angeles. As such, I have invited, you've already met Lieutenant Bracken to provide some additional information that you may find useful. Also with me here is Mike Grant from our City Attorney's Office, who will provide a legal opinion in regards to the discussion that we'll have this evening.
Thank you, Rubik.
Lieutenant.
Chair Gonzalez, Commissioners, my name is Lieutenant Stuart Bracken. I'm assigned to the Traffic Bureau and Joint Air Support. So
welcome.
Thank you very much. I was asked to come here this evening to potentially touch on a couple of points related to this topic, give you an opportunity to ask some questions I might possibly have the answers to. I'll do my best. But before we start, is there anything in particular that you're looking for with respect to this issue?
I think it would be good for you to start, please.
Okay. We pursue a very aggressive enforcement strategy within the city. The Office of Traffic Safety has awarded us a sizable grant again this year. It's something we pursue every year. This year, we've got approximately 45 different operations that we're working throughout the years, or throughout the year, the course of the grant. Things like checkpoints and DUI saturations. But more to this point, we do pedestrian enforcement, bicycle enforcement, speeding details, distracted driver, and even a couple of motorcycle details. We've just recently finished another one where we focused on pedestrian safety, and within 6 hours we issued about 55 citations to various pedestrians, drivers, and cyclists. We also, with those, given certain circumstances, issued a number of warnings as well. We're granted that ability, and sometimes people just aren't always aware, and so our officers make that decision at the time and do so in the appropriate manner. One of the tools that we have is Vehicle Code Section 21760, the 3 Feet for Safety Act. So that's one of the items that we have that allows us enforcement, particularly related to bicyclists. With respect to the topic of the anti-harassment discussion and the LA ordinance, with the passage of 21760, there is, as I've been told from our general counsel, an issue of preemption, and that since the state has enacted this legislation to address bicyclist safety, particularly 21760, it's unclear whether local agencies still have the authority to legislate in this area. Anything past that, I will gratefully defer to Mike Grant here, who could speak to that much better than I could. At this time, I believe we have the tools that we need. We have investigations that go on. People come in, they make allegations of these types of incidents, and where appropriate, we will investigate, put a case together, and take it over to the district attorney for their consideration for filing.
Thank you. Can you tell me, I have a couple questions. 21760, do you know of any citations that have been given in the city of Glendale with respect to 21760?
No, I do not have those numbers.
Okay, I was expecting that answer, and I suspect that one of the reasons is this is something that is hard to enforce. Even if there was video surveillance or some kind of video recording, there's no way of knowing at what distance a driver is passing a bicyclist. So I don't want the city of Glendale to rest on that law thinking that everything is good and there's nothing else for the city to do because that law is in place. So I want to make that note. The OTS funding that the city of Glendale receives, is that restricted to the types of citations or warnings that you're given, whether it's to drivers, bicyclists, or pedestrians?
There is no particular restriction. There are some operations, they want some of our more prolific primary cause collision factors, our primary collision factors, violations, and so we will go out and we'll look particularly for those, but for the most part, everything else is fair game.
Okay. The reason...
Commissioner, I would also say, too, though, while this 21760 is not the only avenue we have to pursue, we have other criminal penal code sections, too, that we can pursue, as we have recently, whether it be assault with a deadly weapon. So there are other avenues that we will use, even beyond this, that gives us even a broader scope.
Okay. The reason I ask about the OTS funding is I've seen in the news press, maybe as recently as last week or the week before, the number of citations that were issued to each target audience. And there were several questions that came specifically out of the organization Walk by Glendale about targeting pedestrians and bicyclists. To some degree, some would argue an outsized proportion based on traffic reports, safety reports that we've seen in the past, where the reason for which these accidents happen are maybe 50-50 or are mostly at the fault of the driver. So can you give us an explanation as to why, I don't remember the exact proportion, maybe 60, 75% of citations issued during this last sting, or for lack of a better term, was targeted to pedestrians and bicyclists, when we know for a fact that it's the drivers that are really causing the problem, for the most part?
Well, a couple of points there. Number one, the primary issue is that it's a requirement of the grant that we focus, and I don't like the term target, but we focus on particular areas. There's a pedestrian bicycle operation. And so those are the ones that we're particularly looking for. Speeding, we're not going to be looking for bicyclists. We're not going to be looking for pedestrians. Distracted drivers, we're not going to be looking for those target audiences either. But within my position, I commonly hear it's the terrible drivers in Glendale. But I know for a fact, because of the stats and because of what I see and probably what all of you see when you drive around the city, we've got some bad pedestrians here too. And it's really a culture that we need to address, as the chief has stated. And that's going to be mostly education. We can get out there with enforcement and we can do what we need to do. But with kind of addressing your question about why there seemed to be a disparity, it's just what the officers saw at that time. They're not necessarily, trying to get, if they have the ability to cite drivers, pedestrians, and cyclists, they're not out there looking just for one group or two groups. They're looking for everything. And so it's really just whatever they happen to observe at the time, wherever they are.
Okay. I think what will be my last question is, can you give us a status update, and maybe you can't. Part of the reason why this agenda item is here is because of the incident on Chevy Chase. And we've heard conflicting things. We've seen the video. We've seen a snippet of the interview. Is there any information you can shed on that and maybe give us a status update?
Commissioner, yes. We have concluded our interviews with the cyclists, because there were two of them there, with the driver. That case has been assembled, put together, and delivered to the district attorney. And at this point, we're deferring to whatever charges they may elect to file.
I'm not too familiar with the process. Is there a recommendation that's given from the police department to the district attorney, or are you just laying out facts and hoping that they'll make a decision? I'm not sure how it works, so I apologize.
Yeah, my investigator will take the case over. And a lot of times it's a discussion. They'll have a lot of questions for them. There may at times be a recommendation. In this particular case, I can't say exactly what he may have recommended, but ultimately it defers to the district attorney, and it's their decision. Oftentimes there are cases we take over, and we believe that there's a very strong case for a particular charge, but they don't see it that way. Sometimes it goes the opposite way too. But it always falls with them for whatever they elect to file.
Is that a report that's currently available to the public? Should somebody request to see that investigator's summary of what happened?
Given that it's still under investigation, I don't believe so, but I would defer to Mike.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the response.
Yes, Commissioner Gonzalez and members of the Commission. There is an exception to the public record request when the police department has it under investigation and it's being referred for charges. It will not be public until a later date.
And when it goes to the DA, as been mentioned by the lieutenant, is it available then?
No, not quite yet. Not until charges have been filed.
So no charges have been filed on this situation. Is that what I understand? What is the definition of charges filed as a layperson? I'm sorry to ask that question, but I mean, that's such a broad term. I don't...
In this case, it will be the district attorney files a complaint against the driver.
Where does our police department stand on something like this? And I understand you don't can you make a charge? Can the police department make a charge using the terminology I just heard, or do we have to wait for the DA, or how does it work?
Mr. Chair, we will take the entire case over with potentially a recommendation. Sometimes in cases where it's clear, we will make a recommendation. In other cases where it may not be clear, we won't. We'll just take it over and let the DA review that.
Chair Gonzalez.
Yes, please.
Members of the Commission, if an officer was there and observed it, the officer would have the option of issuing a citation. But since the officer was not there, the police department did not charge it. And what they do frequently, and even in the city attorney's office when there's a violation of the municipal code, if an officer wasn't there to observe it, then a report is taken and it's investigated, and our office, in a case of a municipal code, would file charges. Similarly, in a case of a vehicle code violation, the district attorney would file the charges, would file a complaint against the driver allegedly causing the situation.
So I guess there's an argument could be made appropriately from the police department that if they're not there, it's hard to really file a charge. That's what I'm hearing. Or do you, based on the facts that you see, you can still make a charge?
Oh, no, charges can be brought. I mean, in this case, there was even a video, so there is evidence. I mean, for the district attorney to view. I mean, and so it's more than just an account of witnesses. There's actually a video. So, they have to weigh it. They have to decide whether they can prove their case by preponderance of an evidence. It is a criminal matter. So.
Just to follow up, please.
I'm sorry. If I said preponderance, I apologize. It has to be. I apologize. I'm thinking of something else. They have to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, like any criminal matter, not the preponderance evidence. I apologize.
So the question might have already been asked and answered, Lieutenant. But since this has been given to the district attorney, has our police department made a charge, for the lack of a better word? I didn't. You may have answered that, and I'm sorry, I didn't understand it. Has it been given to the district attorney, and they're going to work on it? Sans a charge by our police department?
Correct,
okay.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, we don't necessarily make the charge. We take the entire case over for review, and the district attorney is the one who ultimately draws the complaint and elects which penal code section, which vehicle code section to charge.
But I thought I heard earlier that a police department can file a charge.
Well, I think it's kind of a matter of mixing legal terms, maybe. I mean, we may say that we're going to file charges, but ultimately, what we're talking about is taking a case over for the DA to review. They're the ones that actually file the complaint, file the charges.
Okay, so our police department cannot file a charge. They actually look at the issues and they're given to the district attorney for their decision.
Attorney Gonzalez, if they have not issued a citation, then yes, they would simply bring all the information to the district attorney, who then, decides whether to bring charges against the individual or not. They do it through a document known as a complaint.
So, if the police department gives a citation, then that is a charge?
That is the charging document.
I see. So there was no citation issued here because there was no police officer, apparently, right?
Correct.
Okay. So then the chances of issuing a charge are pretty hard if you've not given a citation.
No,
you still could do it. You still can.
Oh, yes, the district attorney can still do it.
No.
Oh,
I'm talking about the police department.
No, yeah.
The police department cannot, is what I'm hearing.
The police department cannot.
Unless they have given a citation.
Unless a citation has been given.
Okay.
So, sorry about the line of questioning. We're all obviously learning about this.
And I'm just getting comfortable with this because I was a bicycle rider for many years, and I experienced some incredible circumstances. So I really appreciate, Lieutenant, that you're here to be able to respond to some inquiry. So we're just getting started. Please go ahead, Alex.
Thank you for being patient with us. So as I'm understanding it, let's say that the city of Glendale has an ordinance in place that says, just theoretically, if a car swerves in towards a bicyclist, they are going to get a citation. And if we see that on video, like we have in this case, they can then, and the police department is presented with this evidence, they could then be issued a citation and fined for something. Is that correct? Without having to deal with the DA's office?
If the city had an ordinance, most likely the police department would, in the same situation, if an officer was not present and observed the violation, they would refer it to our office, the city attorney's office, and then we would conduct our own investigation and decide to file our own criminal complaint in violation of the municipal code.
Irrespective of the DA?
Yes, if we had our own ordinance.
So that makes a case for further discussion. Then, if I may, please, I'm sorry, would you have any? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would also add,
please,
if I personally observed an incident like you described where I saw a vehicle intentionally swerve at and strike a car or strike a pedestrian or a bicyclist, It wouldn't be a citation. It would be an arrest.
It would be an arrest, you said?
An arrest.
Okay.
But if it was
an assault with a deadly weapon or an assault, depending on the circumstances.
But if it wasn't a strike and it was
a harassment,
there was no property damage, there was no personal damage. Do you have grounds for which you'd give a citation, maybe reckless driving or?
Potentially. There are a lot of variables to be determined,
Sure.
depending on what the driver says,
Right.
what the cyclist or pedestrian says, that type of thing. But I want to assure you, Commissioner, we take these issues exceptionally serious. Not only for just cyclists, but for pedestrians and drivers, for everybody in the city. So this isn't something that we disregard, we don't take seriously because it's a pedestrian or a cyclist or whatever. But we do take them exceptionally serious, and our motor officers are out there to enforce the law.
Yeah, and I thank you for doing that, and I'm relieved and excited to hear that the police department has a bicycle unit now. My main concern is, as somebody who bikes every day to get to work, 99% of the time that I'm biking, there is no police present in any circumstance. So the reason why I was glad that this came up is I'm trying to figure out ways where bicyclists can feel safe and have mechanisms and tools in which people can be brought to justice, particularly now that a lot of people have GoPros, they're recording everything like we saw in this instance. Even drivers are having dash cams and they're recording what they're seeing on the street. I want to make sure that there are ways where bicyclists or pedestrians or drivers can bring these issues to the city and they can be addressed quickly. And I'm familiar with, not too familiar, but I'm aware that there's an ordinance in place in Los Angeles. And I think that based on those grounds and based on the things that we're seeing in the city of Glendale, per its reputation, per its increase in an interest in bicycling, per our interest to implement sharrows on streets where people are going 30, 40, maybe 50 miles an hour. These are conditions that are not particularly safe for people to be riding their bikes, but they do it because they have no choice. I need to ride my bike on Verdugo to get to the park and ride by Glendale High School. There are no bike lanes anywhere in sight. I'm often sharing the road with cars, and it's not a pleasant place to be. I don't think anybody in this room bicycles on a regular basis and experiences the fear that I experience when I'm riding 15 miles an hour next to a car that's going 40, where the driver thinks that it's okay to pass me at 6 inches. So I'm very concerned, and I'm glad this is here today. I'm hoping that this is an ongoing discussion that does not end tonight. For personal reasons and otherwise, I think that this is a conversation that needs to be had, and I don't know at which opportunity we can do this, but I would like to see some kind of review and ongoing discussion about having a similar ordinance in Glendale.
So if I understood it correctly, Lieutenant, there's enough laws on the books, I think I heard you say, and I may have misunderstood you, that would communicate in some way to not only drivers, but also bicyclists, because I know bicyclists can be putting themselves in danger sometimes because they may react inappropriately. I know that from experiences both as a driver and also as a bicyclist for, I said, many, many years. The concern I have is how can we communicate to drivers and bicyclists to be better aware of the road and avoiding issues that could really be very, very serious. I mean, am I understanding that you feel the police department, because of the state legislation that is on the books, has the, let's say, the laws that you could issue citations on issues like this?
Mr. Chair, that's correct, yes. And as I read through the LA ordinance, that seems to be a civil remedy not a criminal remedy. And I think there's a significant distinction there. So with respect to enforcement, we have tools there that we presently use, and they work for us. With discussing kind of the issue of what makes the most impact, we see enforcement, and writing tickets typically is the best educational process. So it's all about education, but a strong facet of that is the enforcement.
I think the thing that makes it difficult is that the car is so big and the bike is so small, and it's scary. Urban biking is not easy.
I would agree with you.
No, that's what I was going to say. Usually, as you said earlier, Lieutenant, that pedestrians are not good pedestrians in this city. And they think they're immune, both bikers and pedestrians, from accident. And because vehicles are so big, and pedestrians, they got to take their responsibility, especially bikers as well. You're behind the wheel. You got to take responsibility for your own action as well, to what you're doing, and not go through oftentimes traffic lights or because you're not immune. You might very well get hit. I guess that's what this grant was for, which you guys were working on last week.
Commissioner, that's correct, and that the grant is one of those functions that helps us get out and do the enforcement that we need to do. But that's not the only time that we're doing the enforcement, too. I want to make that clear. The officers are out there at other times, not only during the operations and enforcing the rules of the road. The issue on Ivy is a very serious issue. But, Commissioner, like you noted, we have a lot of issues on a lot of our streets. And so we're spread pretty thin, and we do the best we can. We get a lot of complaints throughout the city. We do our best to address them. We hand them out to the officers. But they're also assigned to schools, and schools are a really important issue. Drop-off times and pickup times.
When it's congested, especially.
That's correct. And so, we've got the concerns of those little ones out there that may not have the best judgment, may not have a parent standing nearby. And so we want to be out there at those times as well. So we really have a broad brush approach that we use for enforcement in an attempt to keep the city as safe as we can.
So, Lieutenant Bracken, the reference to grant, is there a sunset is that grant money that allows our police department to have extra resources to take care of the issues you've been talking about? Are those funds going to stop at some time, or?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chair. So they typically run from October to October.
But is it the city council who makes the decision on those? Does anyone know? Or, am I hearing then the next fiscal year the grant might not be available?
Mr. Chair, we've applied for the next year's grant. We haven't received notice whether or not we're going to receive that, but it is a process that is brought to the City Council in a report, and they vote on electing to use it or not.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Chair Gonzalez and Commissioners, I just want to follow up real quickly on a couple points that were raised by the Commissioner. The three cities, Berkeley, Los Angeles, and Sunnyvale, have passed these ordinances. Interestingly enough, they are not criminal ordinances, so they allow the bicyclist, the victim, to sue the driver who caused this and receive money damages. There's still an issue. Just wanted to mention that these ordinances were passed in 2011 and 2012. Since then, the legislature in 2013 passed 21760 of the Vehicle Code, which became effective in September of 2014. So there's still an issue, even though those laws were earlier in time, there's still an issue of whether cities are preempted, as it was mentioned earlier, from adopting these ordinances, because the legislature has expressed an interest in preventing harassment of bicyclists. In fact, the author of that bill back then says that it was designed to prevent harassment of bicyclists, cars coming too near them. But anyway, that's something that our office, if directed, would do. We didn't have enough time to research it for today's commission meeting. That's something if the council or whatever gave us direction, we would definitely look into, make sure that we could do something similar or not to Berkeley's, Los Angeles, and Sunnyvale's.
I was going to Again, thank the Lieutenant for being here and giving us your update and your good words on this issue. And we have a high regard for the work that's being done. It's not anything against our police department or anything like that. And we appreciate, Rubik, that you were able to have the Lieutenant here. Just to kind of maybe, if it's okay with the Commissioners, wrap this up, I guess I'd like to hear from the Lieutenant. I think I heard from the attorney, and I apologize, I don't know your name, sir. Mike.
My apologies. Mike
Thank
Grant.
you, Mike. You were introduced earlier. I apologize. And from Rubik, in the spirit of Alex's comments about further dialogue on this notion, what do each of you recommend? Just shortly, I think I heard yours, Mike, relative to some research. But Lieutenant, do you have anything that you can suggest about this relative to keeping this on the agenda as Alex has requested?
To keep it on the agenda
for the seriousness of the topic and how we can make sure that as a city I know we had incredible work done on the issues of pedestrians and street and everything. Maybe this was covered there. I don't know. I was not a part of that. I don't remember reading anything about it that included issues of bicyclists. So I'm thinking what Alex was saying is, how do we continue to keep this in the forefront of at least this commission's thinking, since we're part of transportation and parking?
I would say, number one, I'm glad this has come up. I think it is a very important topic. Anything related to the safety of our citizens, whether pedestrians or bicyclists, exactly. I think we need to keep talking about it. You mentioned the signs out there, the changeable message signs that have the number of citations that were issued, for a certain amount of time.
That was very powerful on Kenyatta, by the way.
Well, and that was our point. Even if it wasn't spoken of well,
right.
The idea was to get it spoken about and to create a dialogue. And so maybe further things like that. But we welcome the opportunity to continue this discussion. How to continue this discussion, I think, with a body like this, I think you guys can drive that however you wish, and we'll be more than happy to be a partner in that. And as long as it's safety related, which obviously it is, we're all in.
Thank you. Alex, you were going to say something, I think?
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the 3-foot bill versus the anti-harassment ordinance. A bicyclist can be harassed in ways other than a driver passing by at less than 3 feet. The anti-harassment ordinance, I believe, mentions very specific things like honking, cursing, other behaviors that go beyond just the scope of the distance at which you're passing a bicyclist. So, and that's part of the reason why I want to push this and not just rest, given that response, that there are other things that can be done that could put a bicyclist in danger. And at the very least, I would like to see some kind of analysis, a legal analysis, or from law enforcement of this ordinance and how it would be appropriate for a city like ours. I've already laid out the context, what kind of city we're in, the interest in biking, the condition of our streets, and the kind of bike infrastructure that we're implementing. I think this is a ripe discussion, and I think that there are many bicyclists out there that are in danger. And I would hate for this commission to not do anything about it. There are things that law enforcement should be doing that they are doing. There are things that a commission can be doing and I think should be doing. So that's my suggestion. I think that at the very least, possibly at the next meeting, there can be some kind of analysis or report, at which point this commission can make a recommendation or not. So that's where I stand. That's where I stand.
Are you referencing that relative to the potential of an ordinance?
Yes, I would.
The language?
I would like to see the analysis of the anti-harassment ordinances that were mentioned in other cities, compare them to the 3-foot bill and its limitations there, and how that would be applicable to the city of Glendale, and whether or not it would be appropriate.
Rubik, please.
Chair Gonzalez, members of the Commission, if it is the Commission's desire, we could certainly bring back an item agendized, which would include a legal analysis, like Mr. Grant mentioned, including Lieutenant Bracken's discussions in further detail, comparisons to the existing ordinances and the laws that we have on the books, and provide all that information for you for further discussion when you have a full commission, perhaps, and we'll take it from there, whether it be the majority of the commission who would recommend an ordinance or would be satisfied with the existing laws that we have in place.
Do you need that as a form of a motion, or do we have enough information on the discussion?
Chair Gonzalez.
I'm sorry?
I will need a second on that.
The only problem with that is, Mr. Chair.
Please.
For example, Berkeley is a school city, and they're all students, and everything revolves around UC Berkeley over there. And whether in the north part or south part, I mean, the people who live there, and everybody bikes. I think that was a very smart law that they passed and they put on their books for that city. I'm not sure about Sunnyvale, how avid bike riders are they? But does Glendale warrant such an ordinance? Do we need such an ordinance? And do we have such avid bike riders in the city like Berkeley does? Before we go into discussion. What do you think, Lieutenant?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Kirkjian, and that could be, those kinds of information and details could be part of the report. We could look at the statistics, how many riders they have in those three cities compared to Glendale, if that's your desire. That will give you more tool to make a decision moving forward.
So did I understand, Alex, that you made a motion because I heard Rubik say that we needed a second? Is that what, and I noticed Anish was writing the thing down, but would you formally make a motion?
Sure. If it wasn't articulated well enough, I'm formally making a motion.
Anish, do you have enough information relative to what was stated?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I'm sorry. Is there a second to the motion?
Can we postpone this motion to the next hearing when we have a full board?
I will second the motion. I just think it's appropriate to keep the momentum going as in the past dialogue or the past agenda item. Otherwise, it could be another 2 or 3 months, given the infrequency of our meetings. So for that reason, I second the motion. So it's been moved and seconded. I'm sorry, is there any discussion of the motion, please?
I mean, I would just say that all we're asking staff to do is look into it and report back to the commission. So any decision that is going to be made will be made at the next meeting, and hopefully more commissioners will attend.
Chair Gonzalez, members of the commission, for clarification, the motion is not related to the implementation or recommendation for an ordinance to City Council at this point in time. From what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's to bring back a report with the analysis and more details and more in-depth details for further discussion.
And would that include, so when would be the earliest opportunity to make a recommendation? Would that be at that meeting where the report is provided, or is it at a future a meeting beyond that?
Commissioner Bartelsov, I would say it depends on how the discussion goes, right?
That's a good response, Vivek. Thank you.
But it could be as early as the meeting at which the report is presented.
Possibly.
Possibly, not likely, but maybe.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, the interesting choice of words. Now, I can certainly appreciate that we're not making, the motion did not include wanting a recommendation. I think that was very clear. And you've clarified it, Rubik. Could the staff, especially Mike and the legal people, make a suggested language just for discussion that comes out of that research that might then lead to an action or possibly not lead to an action?
Chair Gonzalez, by that you mean suggestion as to the language and potential ordinance?
Potentially, yeah, for discussion, not, and that, because like you said, depending on the discussion, it might lead to an action, it might not.
Actually, sorry to interrupt, but what I'd rather see is a copy of the ordinances for Berkeley, Sunnyvale, and Los Angeles for us to review. That will give us a good guideline what the potential ordinance could be or could not be. I think, can we receive copies of those, Mr. Grant?
Absolutely, and we can provide it in the packet for the meeting in which you consider this. So, I mean, I have the 3 ordinances here anyway, so we could definitely provide it to you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think it's clear that there's not going to be a recommendation. It'll be a study or an analysis of other ordinances that exist, specifically LA and potentially others. I still would like to clarify, Rubik, not a recommendation, but could there be suggested language that can then, during a discussion, potentially be modified or requested comments from Mike and legal people and yourself that an action could potentially take place? That's all I'm
Chair
asking.
Gonzalez, yes, with the caveat. I would hate to go through the exercise and, like Lieutenant Bracken mentioned, we're all spread very thin, and putting an ordinance together, we don't simply want to duplicate what other cities have. It needs to
I appreciate
fit,
that
right?
very much.
So it needs to fit our needs, our specific, unique Glendale way, and that takes a great deal of time and effort. So just in case the commission is not moving towards recommendation for an ordinance, I would hold that for further discussion. Once you have agreed which direction to move forward to, then I'm pretty sure the city attorney's office would be more than happy to provide suggested language.
And of course, we would be happy to provide it, but there may be, our analysis may show that the state has preempted us too, so that then it wouldn't be an opportunity to really to present one. But we'll definitely research the issues.
Okay, commissioners are okay with that? Yes. Okay, good. So there's a motion on the floor. Anush, please.
Commissioner Kirkjian?
Yes.
Commissioner Bartusoff?
Yes.
Chairperson Gonzalez?
Yes, and thank you. Again, Lieutenant Branken, thank you for your time and being here for the entire meeting from the start.
Not a problem. Thank
Appreciate it very much. And just by the way, those signs that I guess the police department put those up, or maybe Public Works or a combination. My wife and I live on Cañada. And as soon as those signs went up, it's amazing how many neighbors spoke about it. There was like so many tickets in 6 hours. You know, it didn't say speeding tickets. It just said tickets. Mm-hmm. Did you get complaints about them?
No.
Oh, I thought I heard you say something.
No.
I think they were really good. I mean, people slowed down.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move to number 6. I think given everything we've had, I mean, maybe others have other things to discuss. I just have one tiny item, but Ira, do you have anything?
No.
So mine is just a request that I had meant to bring up a few meetings past. And I know we had really good news months ago, Rubik, on the discussions with Caltrans regarding Mountain and the freeway, on the 2 freeway. Is there anything getting close to implementing there? I was, by pure coincidence, there again every day this morning on the day of our meeting, and there's a total backup of traffic at that intersection. And I know once you told us, you said the good news is they've agreed to something. The bad news is we're working with Caltrans. Is there any way that we can get a feel for that? Do we know what they're going to do at all?
Chair Gonzalez, they have agreed with our recommendations. We provided design to them. They haven't rejected it. That's another good news.
The good news.
But again, bad news is we're working with Caltrans. And nobody really knows. They're very compartmentalized at Caltrans, so it's in the permit section, and we have to obtain an encroachment permit. So they've reviewed it. We haven't gotten a response back. But like I said, the good news is they haven't rejected it. So,
is there any way of finding out? Is it going to be the year of 2016 or the year of the month of or something?
We will definitely make some contacts with maybe the supervisors and complain.
And I think this isn't just one commissioner's comments. I think there are others who use that intersection a lot. And what happens is the people backed up on the freeway on mountain, they start beeping horns and going in front of each other, and they're getting to work in the morning, and the thing is red, and there are no other cars coming from the east.
Right.
Okay. Thank you very much for the meeting this evening and for staff for preparing everything. Mike, it was a pleasure to meet you. I'm sorry, Alex?
Sorry, I just remembered one thing, if I may. Mr. Galanian, there's the park and ride at Wilson on Broadway. I take that every morning, and at 7 o'clock in the morning, there are about 10 or 15 people waiting for the commuter express bus in that little island that we have. It's currently mulched. There's nothing on that lot other than, I think, an oak tree and the sidewalk. And I'm wondering, perhaps this is a question that should be directed to Parks and Rec, but is there any opportunity for us to make that bus stop more welcoming, whether it's having not a proper bus shelter, but some kind of shade structure or benches to make that space a little more user-friendly? We're in a rainy season, and there's no shelter for anybody. In the summer, when I started using that bus in September, at 7 in the morning, it was already really hot. So if there's anything we can do to improve that area, I imagine a couple of benches or a shade structure would be $10,000, $20,000. I know Parks and Rec is looking for ways to spend money to enhance parks, and I don't know if this would fit that description, but I'm hoping that there's something we can do to make it more amenable for those transit users while they're waiting for the bus. It's very popular. By the time I get on the bus, it's full. And it cycles, I think, every 10 or 12 minutes, there's another bus coming in. So there's always a good amount of number of people waiting for that bus to be used. So I don't know if you want to direct me to talk to another department or if you can help me, but I would love to make that bus stop more friendly.
Commissioner Bartrusov, I would definitely check with our transit team. However, I believe that's a metro line.
LADOT express bus, so it doesn't sync with a metro bus stop. It's its own bus stop.
So we'll definitely look into it, and just as you may know, for your information, there are strict restrictions to work under the drip line of an oak tree. So that may be one reason why the area hasn't been improved with any hardscape.
Okay.
But we'll definitely look into it.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Anush, when is our next scheduled meeting, please? Just to make sure I have it.
Chairperson Gonzalez, that would be April 25th.
25th?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all those in favor of adjournment, please stand.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Someone to move it and second it as well, please.
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
Seconded.
Thank you.
Roll call, please, for the motion.
No, not necessarily.
You don't need that. Okay, just a motion. Okay. Thank you.